Okay, so I've got a fresh Laravel project set up here with Inertia and Vue, and I've created a couple of routes which show a list of notes and also allow a note to be stored. We'll look at them later, but if you want to grab the starter kit, you can grab that directly from the GitHub repository for this course. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and install Momentum Modal, get this set up before we start to obviously create a modal and style it out. So let's head over to the GitHub repository and we'll come down here to the Composer installs. This needs to be installed on the back end as well as the front end, because this provides some nice helpers for us to trigger modals and register modals. So let's go ahead and pull in the Composer require. We'll head down here and we will pull in the NPM requirement, and that's pretty much it. We're done. So the first thing that we need to do is place the overall modal container somewhere in our app. So that would be, in the case of using Laravel Breeze, the authenticated layout or the guest layout if you needed it to be in there. So basically just the overall template for your app. This needs to be included in that location. So we're going to go ahead and import this from that package. So import modal from Momentum and modal. And that's pretty much it. We're just going to go ahead and use this modal now. Put it somewhere on the page. So we could put this just at the very bottom, just before the ending template. And that is now included on the page. Let's head over. We don't see any errors. Great. So the next thing that we need to do is head over to our app.js file. So the entry point where everything gets set up within Inertia. And we need to register this as a plugin so it can work within the client side, so we can trigger these really easily. So let's go ahead and import the plugin here, which is just a modal in lowercase from Momentum Modal. And then we're going to come down here to our plugin section. So you can see we're already using things like Ziggy and the base plugin for Inertia, but we're going to go ahead and use that modal plugin just in here. Now, the really important thing here is we need to pass some options through to here to tell this how to resolve our modal components. So let's go ahead and give some options in here, and then we're just going to talk about where we're going to put these. Now, you can put these anywhere because your modals are just going to be Vue templates. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But what I'm actually going to do is outside of the pages directory, I'm going to go ahead and create a new modals folder. You don't need to do this. You can do this directly within your pages directory and have these as sort of pages that you open. But I like to keep these separate as modals. So we are going to go ahead and create a modals directory, and then in here we need to work out how to resolve these components. So we're going to use the resolve option, and this is pretty much just going to look like how we resolve normal pages within Inertia. So we can pretty much just grab this actually and just paste it in here and make some changes to the way that we look this up. So instead of going into pages, we're going to go into the modals folder that we've just created. And then again, here we're going to change this to modals so we can look for the correct template when we look inside of this directory. And that is pretty much it. That's all we need to do to look for the modals. Again, if you wanted these in pages and you wanted these to be in a modals directory, then you would do that. So you can just change this around to however you like. Okay, let's head over, and I'm just going to go ahead and restart npm run dev just in case. Let's go over and give this a refresh, and everything looks good. So let's trigger our first modal. We'll go through the steps to do that. Now, a modal is triggered via a route. So what we need to do, if we wanted to create an example modal, we need to register a route for every single modal that we create. And this is really nice because it means, as we saw from the introduction, we can just land back on a route and that modal will be shown out again. So I'm going to go over to routes and web. We're going to ignore these two controllers that we already have. And we're just going to create out a standard route like we would when we normally render an Inertia page. So if we were creating a normal page, we would just create a normal route out. And in this case, I'm going to say example. So let's go and just comment this out and create a controller. And we could do this all in a closure, but we're not really going to do that. So let's create out an example modal controller just inside of here. And let's go ahead and reference that in here. So example modal controller, and that's it, and we're done. And of course we can give this a name and then reference it directly within our templates. So let's say modals.example, and let's say modals/example. Okay, great. So let's reference this and actually click through to it within our app. Just before we do that, let's go ahead and add in an invoke in here and just do nothing for now. So I'm going to come over to the dashboard and we'll just link to this like we normally would within Inertia. So we're going to go ahead and put in our link here. We're going to use our href to use our root helper, and that is modals.example. And we're going to say open modal. So just like linking through to a normal page within Inertia. Let's go over and try this out. And yeah, we just need to make sure we import link from Inertia. And there we go. So when I click on this, obviously nothing happens at the moment because within our invoke, we're not doing anything. What we would normally do within invoke is use the Inertia helper or the Inertia facade to render out a specific view. So what we're not going to do is modals and then the example modal that we're about to create. Instead, using this package, because we have a composer installed on this, it adds the functionality into the backend and gives us a modal helper within here. So we can do this and then reference a modal that we have in our app. Now we don't have a modal at the moment, so I'm actually going to get rid of this because remember this is within a modals directory. Let's go over to our modals directory in here and create example.view. And let's just create out a really simple template for now. So this is a modal. Obviously it's not going to look like a modal at the moment, but we're referencing it in there. Now, one thing that you need to do when you register this out and you reference the modal rather than the page that you want to render is a base root. This is really important because your modal sits on top of a root. Your base root is going to be whatever you see behind that modal by default. So for example, if you had a sign-in modal, you would probably want your base root to be the home page because in this case, if someone directly landed on /login and they saw a modal, you might want your home page behind that by default. So we're going to go ahead and just give the base root in here. This is just the named root. I'm just going to choose the dashboard here because we're working on the dashboard. So that is pretty much all we need to do to get this working. Let's head over and just give this a refresh and click. And what we should see is the modal appear. Now, obviously it doesn't look like a modal at the moment, but as you can see, when I click on this, it does actually trigger it. The URL changes, which is really important. So it obviously changes to the route that we registered. And when I re-land on that, the modal is still open. So we can't really do much with this at the moment because we haven't started out. We'll be doing that in the next episode. But that is pretty much Momentum Modal installed and working as we would expect. Our job now is just to style this up. So let's go over to the next episode and look at how we can create a common wrapper for all of our modals so we have some nice consistency and so we can just easily get these modals on the page, however many we create.